a Prime Minister who's consistently been clear about his number one priority.
My first duty, the duty above everything else, is to keep our country safe. A new era in the threats that we face demands a new era for defence and security. That we need to go further and faster, and that's what we'll do.
And for years, even before the general election, he and John Healey, till today his Defence Secretary, were as one that the nation's security couldn't be compromised. But this morning, Healey resigned, publishing a devastating critique that I'm being forced to make decisions that would reduce the readiness of our forces and increase the risk to personnel on operations and could make the country less safe. His reason for quitting was that he's not been allocated sufficient money for the UK's defences. Just 2.68% of GDP in 2030, when we'll reach 2.6% next year. And it wasn't just the defence boss who's had enough. His two parliamentary aides, Pam Nash and Rachel Hopkins, went too. And what about the ambitious Armed Forces Minister, a former Royal Marine?
The Defence Investment Plan needs to be more transformative. So I want to see more lessons from Ukraine right into the integral heart of that plan. I want to see it more integrated, and I want to see in particular how it affects the resilience of this country and makes us safer.
Just minutes after saying that to ITV, he too quit, complaining that decisions that should take days take months. As for Keir Starmer, in writing back to Healey, he didn't seem to understand why his ministers were so upset. He said, "We are backing this, the Defence Investment Plan, with the necessary investment. The increases in spending that underpin this plan will be sustainable and fair." But he said he was sorry that you will not be part of that work going forward. It turns out Healey was told he wasn't getting the funds he needs on Monday. So just look at his face when Keir Starmer said this to Kemi Badenoch yesterday.
So far as defence is concerned, we've already taken a number of measures. We've increased defence spending from 2.3% to 2.6% in 2027.
John Healey has done the honourable thing. Yesterday, I raised the issue of the Defence Investment Plan, and the Prime Minister exposed the fact that he was not going to put money into defence to the amount that was required.
The shockwaves reverberated all the way to NATO's headquarters in Brussels.
I had not heard this announcement. John Healey, I respect very much, so I have to accept your assessment that this happened, but for me it's new. But more generally speaking, what we are seeing all over the alliance is countries increasing their defence investments. And of course, it's not easy.
It isn't easy, but the Security Minister Dan Jarvis has agreed to be the new Defence Secretary. Andy Burnham at, would you believe it, Armoury Bank, campaigning to be an MP and Britain's next Prime Minister. Healey's barrage against Starmer hasn't hurt him at all.
Well, Mr Healey's resignation was about promises not delivered and money or lack of it for the armed forces, the people who keep our country safe. The crux of it is several £billion. We'll get reaction from Robert in just a moment. But first, Harry is here to take us through the figures.
Yeah, Tom, and at their core, these resignations are about money. And this is the extra money John Healey and his Ministry of Defence said it needed to keep Britain safe. £28 billion over the next 4 years. But this is what the Prime Minister said he was able to offer, less than half that amount. Now, since the end of the Second World War, defence spending as a percentage of GDP has gradually decreased in the UK. And since the end of the Cold War, the UK has enjoyed what's known as the peace dividend, meaning more money for schools, hospitals and pensions. In comparison to other top NATO spenders, the UK ranks third, spending 2.3% of GDP on defence each year. In gross terms, we are the sixth highest defence spenders in the world, spending around £75 billion per year. So what does £75 billion per year get you? Well, it pays for more than 70,000 British troops, 13 major combat ships, including 2 aircraft carriers, and 144 jets. But the government says that's not enough. Our armed forces, they argue, have been hollowed out and more defence spending is needed. This row is in part about how to get there. Last summer, the Ministry of Defence set out the Strategic Defence Review, which said Britain's armed forces needed rearming and upgrading in the face of more varied threats from Russia, Iran and China. Now, the Defence Investment Plan was designed to help Britain achieve that. The aim is to reach 3.5% of GDP by 2035. John Healey says Keir Starmer's spending plan won't get the UK anywhere near that figure, and he says that is why he's resigned today.
Harry, thank you. And Robert is here, as I said. Listen, what felt really devastating about this was John Healey was effectively saying, look, you don't even control your own cabinet. You can't persuade them this is the right thing to do. It felt to me like it probably was the final straw for Keir Starmer's leadership. What did you make?
Well, certainly Keir Starmer's authority has been further damaged by Healey's resignation for precisely the reasons that you make. Now, at the heart of this is, another misjudgment by the Prime Minister. And I'm talking about a political misjudgment, not the issue about whether or not he's keeping the country safe, which, Healey says he's not doing adequately. And it is this. He made a promise to put up defence spending, and then he did something which is unusual, which is rather than saying to his Chancellor, it's your job to raise the money, he decided that he would take the lead in trying to persuade the rest of the Cabinet to individually make sacrifices, cuts, to find... there are different numbers floating around. Harry talked about 28 billion. Actually, on an annual basis, probably 18 to 20 billion would have done it, kept Healey in the job. That's every year. It's an extra 18 to 20 billion. But he couldn't even persuade, his cabinet colleagues to make those sacrifices, even to provide that number. And the reason this is so damaging for the Prime Minister is because he has repeatedly said, as you saw in my film, that his number one priority is keeping the country safe. So if his number one strategic aim, his cabinet will not support him to achieve, as you said at the beginning of the programme, many will say he is now Prime Minister in name only. That said, I have to say, everybody around him who is close to him says he will not go easily, willingly, elegantly. Right? We are waiting for the results of this by-election that's coming up. The world and probably everybody in the universe now knows that Andy Burnham wants to be the next Prime Minister. I'm pretty sure if he wins, he will go to the Prime Minister and say, go quietly. I think the Prime Minister will almost certainly say, bring it on. And then there will be the mother of all contests, which will be messy.